So the whole purpose of spirituality is to make our material life rich and perfect. It requires discipline, it's very simple. If you want to reach Olympic standards in any of these games, you go and study what kind of food they eat, what time they go to bed, what time they get up, how constrained they are in every respect, and then the body can be maintained at its maximum efficiency. So if you want to maintain, if you know what parts you are made up of, you are made up of your body, so you have certain duties to your body. You can't ignore it. And our ancestors talked about it by saying, Sharira madhyam khalu dharma sadhanam. Body is the first instrument for achieving all goals of life. So you can't ignore your body. You can't let yourself be so fat that at the age of 40 you have blood pressure. You have to exercise. Is it spiritual or material? You see what I am saying? If you want to make your material life in every way excellent, you have to introduce discipline. You can't eat for eating's sake. You have to eat for something else. You have to eat to remain healthy, to remain disease free, etc., etc. Similarly, you need a discipline with your vital. Of course, you need entertainment, you need art, you need culture, but it should not be an indulgence of your vital. You can't just go on doing it, oh, I like this movie, so I go to bed at 3 o'clock. That's not done, because tomorrow morning you have to go and jog or do things, etc. You won't be able to do it. So find the right time for it, because man's vital life has to be enriched, has to be, for that you need music, you need art, you need culture. So there is no giving up everything. It is in fact accepting everything, find place for everything. And if you do that with your wife, that's the Indian way of life. Before you even can ask questions about God, you have to live a proper life with your wife, bring up children. There used to be a Swami Chinmayanand here, you must have heard his name. He used to come around. And young people, at the age of 18, 20, they want to become sannyasis and they want to spread the message. Many young people used to go to him. Sir, give me sannyas, I'm not interested in life. Nothing doing. You show me you can live a decent married life. Once you have done it for 20 years, come to me, I'll give you sannyas. You see what I mean? See, there are few people like the Buddha who have such intense inner craving. They give up everything. Buddha had a beautiful wife. I don't know how many of them he had. Then he had a child. He was the only son of his father, who was a prince. And it is the height of irresponsibility for any young man to desert his wife and his father and his kingdom and run away. But I won't blame Buddha, because Buddha's inner quest was so strong. It's okay, but you and I are not Buddhas. You see the point? So the point is, spiritual life is a life you can live such that until the inner craving becomes so intense that you want to bend everything, all your energies to that, it is best to use the discipline required by life. Life also requires discipline. It's only the weak, the cowardly people who refuse to take on the burden of life. Take on the burden of life, live it properly, and then you will grow within. It's not very easy to bring up children. It's not very easy to look after one's parents, cousins, this, that, the other, maintain harmonious relationship. This is also yoga. So this is what I was talking about in a wider scale in spiritual life.
I wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier about the fact that all of us are spiritual partners and you cannot change partners or jobs just because you feel that your spiritual growth is not there. Now, I come across a lot of women who are abused. So they are going through really bad circumstances at home, like physical abuse and all different kinds of abuse. So though intellectually this makes sense to me, I don't know how invalidating it would be to a woman if I said that whatever is happening in her life is good for her. Could you talk a little bit more?
Yeah, I was not saying no matter how ugly your life is, you have to stick to it. All that I'm saying is very often we do not explore this alternative. Ask this question. Is entirely the circumstances to blame, or do I have also a contribution to make to this? Once you have done this, and once you find, it happens, unfortunately, life has this aspect as well. You are tied up with somebody who is obnoxious, or, you begin to drift away. It's quite possible, people were in love with each other at the age of 20. It's quite possible by the time they are 40, they have drifted away. Not because they are bad, but their growth is different, they have drifted away. It is possible in Western society to recognize this and say goodbye, we'll remain friends, but I don't think we can remain together. I'm not therefore criticizing any of these things. All that I was saying is we have a tendency to take an easy cop out. These people are not good, I will change them. This is not good, I will change it. That before you do that, you ask this question whether anything needs to be mended in myself, and then after you doing that, you find it is basically incompatibility. You have a right to be what you are. I have no business trying to correct you, but then we can't live together. If you come to that, it's fine.
I think it would be helpful if you could make it clear that when you are in touch with the psychic being,
Yeah.
everything in life changes because the psychic being directs your life.
That's right, yeah.
And the direction from the psychic being is always what should be. Never wrong, never incorrect. So people who are not aware that this glory is there waiting for them, once they are in touch with the psychic being takes over and gives you the right way to go in every single thing that exists. Can you?
Yeah. You see, the psychic being is supposed to be like the sunflower. The sunflower, no matter where you plant it, when the flower comes out, it always tries to turn towards the sun. So, we were talking about the psychic being earlier on. If the psychic being comes out, the psychic being only responds to the good, the true, and the beautiful. The human mind always doesn't go that way. It sees profit in everything. Mind, if the whole problem now is the mind, which is an excellent carrier, like diseases, it's an excellent carrier of the ego. What is it that is bothering the world? It is not Western democracy, liberalism, which Bush is talking about, nor surrender to God, which is Osama bin Laden is talking about. Both these have become excellent carriers for the ego. The entire American ego is sitting on the back of Bush. He doesn't see it. And so the entire Islamic ego is standing on that chap's back. It is the ego clash. You see, they may use the best Harvard professors to justify what they are trying to do, and this is what is happening. This is the mental way. If you are very clever, the mind will justify whatever it wants to do. But if your life is guided by the ego, there is no cleverness in that. There is truth. There is, straightforwardness. There is no crookedness of any kind. And it is the destiny of your soul. And the ego, at best, can think of your prosperity, your happiness of this life. The psychic being thinks of the soul, which doesn't live only in one life. It has a destiny of its own. It has a journey of its own. So, in some cases, if you follow the advice of your psychic being, you may end up a pauper and not a millionaire, but a happy pauper and not a miserable millionaire. This is the difference. That is, the spiritual life is a life which has its own sources of happiness. We need, why do we all love money? Because money is power. Power to buy happiness, power to store happiness. I have $1 million in a bank means I have so much power to buy happiness. And what happiness can money buy? The happiness can money buy is the finite happiness. And the ego goes after finite happiness because it doesn't know anything better than that. But the psychic being doesn't give any importance to this. It has other sources of happiness, and it goes after these, and those are infinite. You know, Sri Aurobindo says somewhere, it's not the time to read these, he says most people want God at a sufficient distance from them. They don't want God very close to them. Because we are all afraid once we get too close, God gets too close to us, He may take away the crude vital pleasures from us. And we all think God must be that cold, heartless, something like a rock. He says, if you have the experience of the divine, your physical enjoyment will be such that your present physical being will not be able to contain it. I just want to read it. It may be a good passage, because whatever is absolutely has no value. From Sri Aurobindo directly, I get that passage. This is one of my favorites. I should be able to get it.
Perhaps after you read, we'll take our time to break and have a little refreshment on the porch, and then if people want to ask informal questions, then we can have an informal question and answer. I think Wendy has some cider or apple juice for us.
Pastries.
Those of you who have this book and want to go back to it, it is from Letters on Yoga, pages 89 to 91. I won't read all the 3 pages, I'll read a couple of paragraphs. Somebody wrote a letter to Sri Aurobindo and said something about the divine, saying that it all looks very dull and disappointing. Look at the old life that I was living. He was a great musician called Dilip Kumar Roy. He says, wonderful life I used to live. I used to give musical concerts. All pretty beautiful women would sit in front of me and sing praises of me. Now it's all dull and this, that and the other. Sometimes you feel this, what have I given up? This glorious life I had, for what? But is the divine then, it's the end of a long letter, something so terrible, horrible, or repellent that the idea of its entry into the physical, its divinizing of the human should create this shrinking, refusal, revolt or fear? Why should we be afraid of the divine? I can understand that the unregenerate vital attached to its own petty sufferings and pleasures, to the brief ignorant drama of life, should shrink from what will challenge it. But why should a God lover, a God seeker, a sadhak fear the divinization of the consciousness? Why should he object to become one in nature with what he seeks? Why should he recoil from sadrishya mukti, that is being like the divine? Behind this fear, there are usually 2 causes. First, there is the feeling of the vital, that it will have to cease to be obscure, crude, muddy, egoistic, unrefined, full of stimulating desires and small pleasures and interesting sufferings, for it shrinks even from its ananda, and which will replace this bliss. Next, there is some vague, ignorant idea of the mind, I suppose to the ascetic tradition, that the divine nature is something cold, bare, empty, austere, aloof, without the glorious riches of the egoistic human vital life. As if there were not a divine vital, and as if that divine vital is not itself, and when it gets the means to manifest will not make the life on earth also infinitely more full of beauty, love, radiance, warmth, fire, intensity, and divine passion and capacity for bliss than the present impotent, suffering, pettily and transiently excited and soon tired vitality of the still so imperfect human creation. One more paragraph and that will be the end. The utmost ananda, ananda is happiness, bliss, the body and life are now capable of is a brief excitement of the vital mind or the nerves or the cells, which is limited, imperfect, and soon passes. With the supramental change, all the cells, nerves, vital forces, embodied mental forces can become filled with a thousandfold ananda, thousandfold bliss he is talking about, capable of an intensity of bliss which passes description and which need not fade away. How aloof, repellent, and undesirable. The supramental love, very often people think, what happens to love? Love is the most precious thing in our life. What happens to love? When you turn to spirituality, what will happen to love? The spiritual man says, as long as you are merely an animal, vital being, you know nothing of love. What you know of love is just a little bit. Love in its real center is a divine thing. And if you had even just one glimpse of it, if you know what it is, he says here, the supramental love means an intense unity of soul with soul, mind with mind, life with life, and an entire flooding of the body consciousness with the physical experience of oneness, the presence of the beloved in every part, in every cell of the body. Is that too something aloof and grand and undesirable? With the supramental change, the very thing on which you insist, the possibility of the free physical meeting of the embodied divine with the sadhak without conflict of forces and without undesirable reactions becomes possible, assured, and free. Now I read all these things because we have a feeling that the happiness that the mind knows is the highest happiness we are capable of. People who have been here, people who have lived the spiritual life say, you guys, you are like country bumpkins. You don't know what physical happiness is. You don't know what vital love is. Because how much love can your vital being can now contain? It's nothing. Because it is full of impurity now. Once that's gone and you are somewhere near here, it's tremendous. And therefore the divine is not something aloof, cold, colorless, odorless, something from which you need to run away except when you are very old and crumbling. This is the general thing, because normally people, when they think of spirituality, they think of tired old sannyasis, nuns, priests who hate everything good and nice about life. Spirituality is for people who love life and not for tired, defeated souls. That's the spirituality that Sri Aurobindo has promised. Thank you very much.